All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Today I'll be doing my preview and prediction for the Week 1 contest between Cincinnati and Arkansas. The Hogs are currently 6-point favorites. Over-under set at 51.5. This one will be on ESPN at 3:30 Eastern Time from Razorback Stadium there in Fayetteville. This is the first meeting ever between these two programs. Look at the Cincinnati offense. They lose a lot. Desmond Ridder, Mike Denbrock, Jerome Ford, some very important contributors to this team's success over the last couple of seasons. But they do add Ben Bryant, who was on the roster previously, went to Eastern Michigan last year, had some success there for that ball club, 3,100-plus yards for the Eagles last year. He's going to come back, and he's going to try to lead this offense. He was here from 2018 to 2020, so he has a pretty, familiar understanding of this offense, even though the offensive coordinator is gone, largely kept intact staff. Looking at the weapons he has, though, Corey Kenner, he's going to arrive from LSU. Jerome Ford came up from Alabama and was a very successful transfer running back. Pairing up with veteran seniors, Ryan Montgomery, Charles McClelland. This is a very impressive running game from a season ago, but the speed of Ford now lost. That's crucial, but I do think that the 5 starters back on the offensive line are really going to allow this run game to thrive. James Tunstall, Jake Renfro, two of the notables. They had 3 guys land on all conference preseason teams, so I think they're going to be just fine when it comes to running the ball this season. Evan Prater, a former 4-star as well at quarterback, but I do think Ben Bryant, he's going to be the one under center, working with a nice group of not just running backs, but some pass catchers as well. Tyler Scott and Trey Tucker. Plenty of speed with those guys. They also got Jaden Thompson. He's a bit bigger at 6'2", 187, but very similar sized pass catchers. These guys can win downfield. They can win vertically. I think that's going to be very important in this game as they face a defense, has kind of its struggles in the back end. So we'll see what happens with this passing game. Really, offense as a whole, though. I do like Josh Wiley coming back at tight end, 332 yards and 6 touchdowns. He was a very important chain mover for them a season ago, red zone weapon. It's kind of curious to see. No one really knows what's going to happen with this offense because, obviously when you're a Group of 5 team, replacing some important talent or reloading is not exactly easy. But I do think that Tucker and Scott are 2 keys to this game, trying to get them in space, work them a lot. Against a loaded box, how will they perform here against Arkansas? That's really going to be a big matchup to watch because they're going to want to run the ball. They're going to want to work from the gun, a little bit of play action here and there. Corey Kenner, though, a nice little one-cut runner. So I think overall, this is a very interesting Cincinnati offense for this ball team. It'll be interesting to see how they match up with the Hogs. Like at the Arkansas RPO-style offense led by Kendall Briles, he turned down, I believe, a big offer to go to Miami, but he's going to stick here and work for KJ Jefferson, who really impressed last season. He's a strong runner. He's got that Cam Newton-like frame of 6'3", 245, 664, and 6 scores on the ground last year. Very efficient passer as well, 67%. 2,600-plus yards, 21 touchdowns, only 4 picks. It was a quite explosive passing game for how conservative they were. I was very impressed with this offense, the balance they showcased. Traylon Burks is obviously gone, so that's going to be a big loss for them. KJ showed the ability to go through progression, though. The ability to be a drawback passer. He's got a strong arm. I expect a big-time season from him. KJ Jefferson has really just kind of emerged out of nowhere. This is going to be another year here under Briles, so the expectations, he's going to continue to grow and be better. 227 yards per game on the ground for this attack. This is where they make their money. Raheem Sanders, 578, 5 touchdowns. Dom Johnson had 3 yards less than that, 7 touchdowns as well. These guys are both 225 pounds, and they run with authority. It's probably the best short yardage group in college football with all that size because you throw those 2 in with KJ, and it's just it's a boatload to try and defend. So I do like this general starting point here with this ground game. They got 2 veteran tight ends as well, and Trey Knox and Hudson Henry. Wide receivers a bit concerned from this season, but they do pick up a handful of transfers. Jaden Hazelwood, he's really good for this offense with his downfield blocking, hoping he can make an impact as a pass catcher as well. They got guys they'll get the ball to in one way or another, though. Toledo transfer Matt Landers. He was at Georgia a couple years ago. They picked him up late. Warren Thompson, he's the only productive one back, though. He was on this team a season ago. He was the next highest. The next highest in receiving yards and receptions are the running backs other than Thompson. So obviously production is kind of scarce here. Ketron Jackson, a long strider that can get downfield in a hurry. Could feel that roll left by Traylon Burks of his catch radius and body control. And then a Fayetteville native and top 150 recruit, Isaiah Santanga. He's got plenty of speed. He can make an impact on screens or maybe downfield. So we'll see if he makes an appearance in this game. The offensive line is stiff run blocking group. Ricky Stromberg, he's the veteran, nasty run blocker. Dalton Wagner, 6'9", 330. He's a veteran at left tackle. Pass protection was shaky at times. Too many negative plays for this offensive style last year. So that's something they really want to work on this fall. I do expect this offense to match up pretty well, though, because you remember, when Cincinnati played Alabama in the Cotton Bowl, that SEC offensive line just completely dominated this run defense, and it's a pretty impressive unit. Cincinnati really plays defense well. That is a Power 5 type defense, but they were just getting blown off the ball by that bigger, stronger, more athletic offensive line. And looking at the Cincinnati defense, they do stop the run pretty well for a 3. For the scheme they run, a 3-3-5. Juwan Briggs, UVA transfer. He's going to get involved this season. He's one of 3 seniors on this defensive front. Malik Van, another. He's going to be a breakout star for them. 8.5 tackles for loss last year. Jabari Taylor at 5.5 stops behind the line. 150 yards per game allowed, 3.5 yards per carry. They absolutely stuffed teams like Houston, Notre Dame, ECU, some really good running attacks last year, but they did get gashed by Alabama, and I think that's something to note as they play another SEC school here that loves to run the ball, and they do it with authority. I think it's an elite unit, though, still for the Bearcats. They do lose 3 draftees in the secondary and some starters up front. Ivan Pace, though, 125 tackles, 13 tackles for loss. Comes over from Miami of Ohio. Pair up with his brother Deshaun with 495 tackles and 4 picks last year. They also have some good depth in Tyler Van Fossen, Huber Wilson. Overall, this is a nice little front 6 that the Bearcats have. These guys are really the tone setters. The 3 guys they lose in the back end, though, it's going to be made up for with the return of safety Javon Hicks and then Arnquan Bush. He should move to cornerback 1. He was their nickel corner, so we'll see how he does in that role. Other than that, there was some new faces. Jacob Dingle as senior at safety. Overall, pretty youthful back end, but this front 6, they're going to look to lead the way this year, and I think they will. But in this game, I think they're going to be a little bit outmatched. But this is a bend but don't break defense. That's always kind of been the style here. They're no joke. Every time they play a good offense, even against Alabama, they couldn't slow down the run, but they did their job through the air. Seems to be the theme. Every time they play a really good offense, they do work. You remember the Notre Dame game last year, Houston, of course, and that's been the theme over the last couple of years. They've really just had teams like ECU's number. Cincinnati plays defense really well at all 3 levels, no matter the opponent. So I think they're really going to show up here. We'll see if they can control things on the ground. Look at the Arkansas defense. The high-powered offenses last year just had a field day with this unit. 513 yards per game allowed in the 4 losses, but more telling was the 7.5 yards per play. They're just so lifeless against Ole Miss and Alabama last year. Against the run of Ole Miss, the Alabama pass. Defense got much better, mainly due to the ability to get off the field. They went from 110th in college football to 15th in third down conversion rate, 13th best in the red zone. Really brought that points per game margin down. They do replace numerous starters in the front 7. Grant Morgan at linebacker, Trey Williams, their best edge rusher, John Ridgway as well. Landon Jackson, 6'7", 270, LSU transfer. He's going to take over defensive end, and they expect big things out of him. He's really going to have to be the tone setter here on this defensive line. Impressive get-off, some really good bend for his size. Zach Williams and Eric Gregory, some good rotational help last season. I like Terry Hampton coming up from Arkansas State. He's a hard worker on the interior. And Cincinnati, they're going to want to ground and pound, so I think this defensive line, they got a pretty good matchup here. In terms of pass rush, though, I don't expect big things out of them. They were fairly solid, just inconsistent last year. 0 sacks across that 3-game losing streak in the middle of last year. And, Trey Williams going off the edge, it's not good. No real edge presence, though, outside of Trey last year. I think that's where Landon Jackson's going to have to come in and try and establish his presence. 3 linebackers had 100-plus tackles. 2 were gone, but Bumper Pool, high-end All-American candidate. He's going to be paired up with Drew Sanders, who was an athletic specimen who can play in coverage. So looking at Josh Wiley, a guy they're going to look to match him up with, can play against running backs as well. Drew Sanders coming over from Alabama. Great addition there. Linebacker, it's going to be a strong part of this defense. Some versatility in him. They might send him off the edge, 6'5", 232. He has the athleticism to do that. So I think if they have to, they will. I don't think it's a great situation if that's the case. It'll be interesting to see which scheme they run. It's going to feature 2 linebackers regardless. A good duo here. The run defense was good, but the physicality they showed, week 1 didn't hold true in the trenches for most of the season. The secondary wasn't terrible, but they just really struggled to cover, especially in the Alabama game. 8-man drops, and they're still allowing big plays over top. That's a concern here because they're playing 2 very speedy pass catchers for Cincinnati. Ladarius Bishop wasn't great in man. Monteric Brown's gone, but he got schooled as one of their best corners. Revamped safety group, though. Miles Slusher, expecting big-time things out of him this fall. Jalen Catalon coming back is huge for them. He's a downhill thumper. High IQ in coverage. He can really cover. I love Jalen Catalon. And he's going to be, the catalyst of this back end. Going to really have to be, tasked with keeping these guys in line, coaching them up. Latavius Brin, he comes over from Georgia. He wasn't much of a coverage help last year, but he's a leader who gets through blocks and makes some tackles well, and he comes from that culture of Georgia. Simeon Blair, he was too much of a liability in the back end for me last year. We'll see if he gets on the field. Dwight McGloverin, some really good ball skills. They kind of need some more playmaking in the back end. So we'll see what happens in the game. I do think that I'm kind of concerned about this back end against these speedy pass catchers because they don't really have a pass rush to match it as well. So we'll see what happens with the Cincinnati passing attack versus this secondary. Well, I got team comparisons. I give the edge at quarterback to KJ Jefferson. Pretty unanimous decision here. He was such an elite player last year in the SEC going up against Ben Bryant, who comes in and he'll be his first year starting here at Cincinnati. Running backs, I think both teams have pretty deep group of backs, but I do like Sanders and Johnson much more for the Hogs. Pass catcher, I like Scott Tucker Josh Wiley, easy edge here for me at Cincinnati. I do think the potential is there for Arkansas this year for their pass catchers to really be difference makers, but just on paper is not going to do it for me. The offensive line, 5 starters back for the Hogs, but Ricky Stromberg is a really good unit, a tough, big, physical offensive line for Arkansas. And I give all the edges here on defense to Cincinnati, the defensive line. I got 3 seniors. I like Malik Van, Jabari Taylor. The depth isn't really there for me with Arkansas. I do think that they'll be doing a pretty good job of stopping the run this year. I do like the linebacking duo that the Hogs have, so I guess you could really call that even, but I do like Deshaun and Ivan Pace there. Van Fossen as well is a very good contributor if they need him to get involved. And then the secondary for Cincinnati, despite losing 3 guys to the league, Hicks and Bush, those guys are 2 veterans who are really going to lead the charge this season. Jalen Catalon is a very good player himself, but that's not enough to give me the edge based solely on his performance. My final thoughts and prediction on this game. This would have been a phenomenal contest last year. Cincinnati, they made the playoffs. Arkansas, it would have been a great resume builder if they could have beat them. And Arkansas, they were very solid themselves last year. Cincinnati, I think the biggest key for them is slow down the Hogs' running game. That's where they want to start. That's where it's going to end, really. Get them to 3rd and 5 or longer. Force those pass catchers to make plays against the 5-man dropbacks and potentially even more. The secondary, rock solid over the years, of course. This is the first time they've really had some turnover in Luke Fickell's era, but I do think that still the principles are the same. The secondary is going to play sound and solid ball all year long. Arkansas, the biggest thing for me is don't get beat downfield in the back end. I think that they're going to win the game in the trenches. I think their running game is really going to control the tempo here. KJ Jefferson, he's going to have a big day. I think the secondary, I think it's going to be about 180 to 220 passing yards for Arkansas. I think they'll have their success. They'll have their moments, especially in the edge a good bit, but downfield I don't expect them to do too much. So I think the Hogs need to keep everything in front of them because last year I've seen that way too much on film where they're just getting tossed downfield, and they got some speedsters for the Bearcats that can really make you pay. So I think this would be a great game. 28-21 for me. I'm going to take Arkansas to win. I just think that the advantage in the trenches is too much. You've seen it last year against Alabama, and I think the same thing will carry over here, especially with some losses up front for them. I think we'll see a healthy balance of this offense for Cincinnati, some nice balance, but they're going to stand tall in the red zone. That will be Arkansas's, and the Hogs running game should have a big day. Inexperience in the secondary will do a few big plays downfield as well for Arkansas's passing attack. But I think overall Cincinnati, they're going to play a tough game. They're going to be there for 4 quarters. The pass rush is concerning. It's going to give Ben Bryant an opportunity to work with his speedy pass catchers, and we'll have some success downfield versus an inexperienced secondary of their own. So I do think both offenses will have some bright moments, but I think both defenses as well will really be the story of this one. Hogs, though, they'll run the ball for 250-plus yards. That'll be the overall difference maker. 28-21 for me. This should be a very good game. Can't wait to see this happen. Expect a big year from the Bearcats. And then although I picked Arkansas to go 6-6, this is going to be a very good ball club this year. It's really going to be tough to beat week in, week out. So this will be a great starting point here in week 1 from Fayetteville. It's going to be it for today's episode, guys. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.